Today, we're going to talk about a decision-making tool and a kind of a comparison tool called the iron triangle. It's also called the triangle of constraints, or simply pick two. And what you do is you have a triangle, if you will, with 3 points. And in each of the 3 points, you have the attributes that you're comparing against. And the idea is that you can only get 2 out of the 3, at least to the degree that you want. So probably the simplest way is just to show you, give an example of how you can use this in the investment business. So let me share this. So if you take a look, this is probably the most common way to use it, which is from a price perspective or cost perspective. So in this case, you can just draw this out or just verbally do it, or napkin presentation. It is, you have the quality of the product, you have the service, advice, help, and then you have low cost or the cost. And obviously this is, you can use this for any type of products. You could be selling shoes and use this. It doesn't really matter. But the idea is like, look, Mr. Client, and when it comes to, the investment business, there's really 3 primary things most people want in a product. They want a high quality product. They want to have good service and advice and help and assistance. And then of course they want everything at a low cost. Well, in the real world, you're not going to be able to get the absolute best quality product at the finest service and do all of that at the absolute lowest cost. So really what you end up doing is you have to pick 2 of the 3 which are most important. So this is a way to really, it's not necessarily a way to say that one product is better than the other. It's really using 2 of the 3 as a way to get the client to pick. Literally what it says is to choose or select what is most important to them. So in the investment business, probably for most people, the quality of the investment, and whatever the word quality means to them, that's going to be, obviously, it's going to be performance, but it's not just performance. It's going to be, long-term perspective, and performance defined how? Defined in the last 5 years, 10 years, or maybe 40 years. Right? Me personally, I'm in favor of using investments, mutual funds that have been around for at least 40 years. If it's younger than that, I'm not really interested. So for me personally, both as an individual, as an investor, and as an advisor, the word quality or the word performance in this context might mean something different than someone that's just performance hunting and wants to get the greatest investment, and they're willing to look back just 5 years, okay, as an example. And so what most people want, though, is they do want some form of performance and quality. Again, maybe it's diversification, maybe it's not as volatile as some other investment. And then, of course, they want service, advice, and help. And some people want more of that. Some people want less than that. And it's funny how when times are good and when there's no challenges, then they don't think this is important. But all of a sudden now the market's going crazy, or maybe they get married and they have kids, or they buy a home, or they're now starting their own business. Now they need advice. Now this becomes much, much more important. And then, of course, everyone wants everything at super low cost, but you're not going to be able to get that. So let's say, just as an example, this is by no means picking a particular favor, but let's just say a client asks you about index funds, and you're offering a managed account, not a managed account, an actively managed account with you attached to it, right? You're the advisor. So you might say, look, Mr. Klein, there's nothing inherently wrong with an index fund. But with an index fund, what's going to happen is a couple of things. One is you're not going to get the highest quality in terms of, 1, diversification, and then 2, in terms of performance, right? The diversification is, it's diversified in the sense that it's, if you're talking S&P 500, which is literally 99% of the time what people mean when they say index funds, I mean the S&P 500, is you're going to get you're going to get 500 different companies, but you're getting them all from America. So it's not very diversified, right? It's just 500 of the same thing, not the same thing, but similar things, okay? Now you could get other index funds, you could get some other international ones, to be fair. But the performance isn't there. Oops. By definition, an index fund is average. I mean, it literally is the definition of what average is, right? Because you're taking the average of the top 500 companies. And there's plenty of actively managed accounts that have, 30, 40, 50, even 80 plus years have outperformed the index. 2 is you're not going to get service and advice and help. But you are going to, because there's no advisor, right? And as soon as you add an advisor to the mix, now it's no longer the benefit of an index fund, meaning it's no longer the low cost. Because the whole point of an index fund is this one, the low cost. So that's there, right? So if low cost is super important to you, even at the expense, if you will, of one of the other two, at least to a degree, then that might be the right choice for you. Or the client might say, well, many managed accounts or actively managed accounts don't outperform the S&P. I actually think that's an old wives' tale. That's really not actually totally true, but there is definitely a group or a section of actively managed funds that don't even do as well as the index. That is true, but there's quite a few that do. Okay, to be fair, but nonetheless, let's go with that. So that's fine. So maybe you can get a good solid average, and you get a low cost, but you're not going to get help. Because as soon as you add help to it, like if you're using an advisory account, that's why I always thought advisory accounts that use an index funds is silly. Is that you're getting the super low cost of an index, but then you're adding the advisor fee, which now deceives the entire purpose of an index fund, which is the low cost, right? So now you've got the higher cost, but you still have an index fund. But anyway, that's a side note. So what happens here is like, Mr. Client, here's the bottom line. It's never really an issue of high cost versus low cost in terms of index funds. It's an issue of help versus no help. And many clients may say, you know what, for me, in terms of the context of the index funds, this is the least important. So I'm willing to give up service and help so I can get low cost, and I'm okay with kind of, a good solid average. Okay, fair enough. Otherwise, you might say, hey, look, I can't get you the lowest cost. I can't compete with an index fund, but I can get you low cost or lower cost than the average. And I can get a good, solid, historically performance mutual fund. And you get me along with it, attached to it, in whatever cost this is. But I can't give you just this, but I can give you these two, and this one not as much. And I'm not going to get into video here which ones. I don't want to get into specific investment recommendations on here, but there's plenty of ones that you can find. But what's important, I think what's good about this particular iron triangle or pick two concept is it's not necessarily like a closing technique. It literally is a way to get the client to think about what's important. So it's not really even like a technique, or at least not one that's trying to get a particular outcome. It really is almost a fact-finding technique, like which is most important to the client, right? And for example, let's talk about variable annuities for a moment. Again, without getting into specifics and actually having investment recommendations, but in a general sense, what do variable annuities do? Well, variable annuities have some product quality things, which is some of them have death benefits, they have a guaranteed income rider, there's some trust-like features that you don't have with a non-qualified account. You have tax deferral, which you also don't have in a non-qualified account. So that would be under the heading of the quality of the product. And you definitely get an advisor attached to it, but they're definitely not low cost. So then the issue would come down to if the client is looking at, so look, you're not going to get all three. We can get you, X amount of cost, whatever it happens to be. You're going to get me attached to the account. In fact, there's no way to get it without me or some advisor, but in this case, it's me. And then we're going to have these 2 or 3 or 4 bullet points of whatever it is that we're recommending here, the reasons for the variable annuity. So now, which one is most important? There's always a trade-off, right? There's always a teeter-totter, if you will, between nothing has everything. Now, having said that, that also doesn't necessarily mean that the most expensive mutual fund, it has the best quality and the best service, right? So you got to be careful. It doesn't mean that if you have a lower cost investment that now you have crappy service and or crappy quality, crappy product, right? It's not, everything isn't completely related to each other when you're comparing multiple different fund families or funds within a fund family. It's more of a general concept. Generally speaking, if you get low cost, you can pick one or the other two, but you're not going to get both, generally speaking. There may be comparing mutual fund A to mutual fund B. Mutual fund B may actually have a lower cost and has better quality and or performance, whatever criteria. And of course, in both cases, they have you, so that's the same in either case. So that can happen as well, but it is a way for you to help the client decide what is most important and understand they're giving something up. And this is just a great way to even when, in the recruiting business, which I've been doing for 25 years, and you're comparing broker dealers, it's the same thing. It's like, look, one of the biggest concerns with looking at a broker deal, not the only one, but one of them, of course, is always cost. This broker deal has these monthly fees, and that broker deal has this amount of monthly fees. Usually, that's what we talk about when we talk about cost. And then the question is, well, what products do you have? And it's not even just what products. In this context, it would be the broker dealer itself is the product. Like what features and benefits and options and availabilities, not just literally what investment products, but their culture or their technology or the compliance flexibility allowing you to do certain things where other broker dealers won't. So it's the product of the firm, right? You are the customer of the firm. You're the agent, the advisor, the rep. And then the other one, of course, is the service and help that you get as well. That's kind of part of the product, but in this case, we'll separate that out. Service of the company, service of the technology, or even service of a manager of a branch, all those type of things. And so I would tell people, look, maybe the firm I'm representing maybe doesn't have the lowest cost, as an example, lowest fees, but we have these features and those features, and with humbleness, you get me, right? And what advantage, is that a great advantage? Maybe it isn't. Maybe you're a super experienced advisor and you don't have no need for my help. Maybe you're not. Maybe what if my service and my training, or even the training that I've built or that the company has, might help you close 1 or 2 or 4 extra sales a year? Would that offset the cost? Right. But the point is that this is a great tool to use both with clients and even your own decision making, because in many cases, especially kind of in the trade and the sales type of industry, usually the product things come down to these 3 things. And so the idea is that in most cases, also, you can usually pick 2. You're not going to get all 3. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Iron triangle.